Away to Skepely. Today we're going to be talking about the 10th labor, which is the Cattle of Geryon. This is right after the ninth labor, which you guys should recall was on the Belt of Hippolyta, where Hercules had to retrieve a war belt from the Amazon Queen. At this point in the story, Hercules is getting really dangerous, really far-flung labors because Eurystheus is afraid of him. He doesn't want Hercules to become more popular than Eurystheus and eventually to overthrow him. Hercules is also doing things the smart way more often. Whenever he can, he's solving things without violence. This is a real sign that Hercules is starting to overcome his real tragic flaw, which was his anger. This one is a classic sort of adventure story. We've got a monster to slay. We've got stuff to bring back. So let's get into it. Eurystheus is sending Hercules to track down this cattle thief named Geryon. He's a really strange monster. The way the text describes it, people often have trouble drawing him. Here in our picture here from this Greek vase painting is Geryon. He's a giant monster with 3 bodies and 3 heads, just sort of all side to side in a row. It is really tricky for a lot of people to picture what's going on here, but as you see, a lot of times he's just sort of drawn as a bunch of people in line. Geryon lives on the western edge of the world. And I want to talk a little bit about that because Hercules ends up traveling literally past the bounds of what the ancient Greeks knew about. So, we nowadays call this the Strait of Gibraltar. Particularly learned people, people who knew about the ancient world, people who'd read these things would still sometimes call them these Pillars of Hercules. And Hercules is actually credited with making this division here. Apparently the Mediterranean Sea used to just be a sea, and Hercules connects it to the ocean. Whether he does this by splitting it in half with his club, or digging through it, or in some versions just building up these 2 mounds at the other side of it, it differs from author to author. This is literally where Spain and Morocco almost meet, but not quite. I've actually got a nice photo of it here. This is a view from Europe looking south, and if you can see just clearly there, I hope you have a nice picture of it. That's looking at North Africa, and the very famous Rock of Gibraltar is off to the right in this photo. So Hercules travels all the way through North Africa, all the way to the western edge of the world, looking for the Cattle of Geryon. And when he finally gets to the Pillars of Hercules, if you know anything about the geography of North Africa, it's enormously hot. It's a desert up there. And Hercules, being oppressed by this heat, actually draws back his bow and fires it up at the sun. This actually impresses the god of the sun, who adds sort of a really humorous detail to this. He gives Hercules his big cup, and Hercules uses that to sail across this strait or this opening that he's just created there to get to Geryon itself. I found this wonderful Greek vase painting of it again, which to me just looks really funny. Hercules is sort of, looking rather distressed in this bowl. Hercules goes and finds Geryon, and usually ends up fighting with him right away. Usually Hercules defeats him with an arrow. The most common thing is that he gets to the side of him and gets an arrow through all 3 of his hearts in one go, because after trying to wound him one at a time, it just didn't seem to be working. Hercules takes this cattle, it's this enormous herd, and then he's got to get it back. And now, instead of going through really hot North Africa, he goes up through Europe. Tons of little no-name towns in Europe, all the way through the Romans, used to tell the story of when Hercules passed through their town with the cattle. In the Aeneid, the great Roman epic, a local king talks about like a giant that stole a bunch of them, and Hercules had to take the whole herd back down and come back and get it. Hercules gets the cattle back to Eurystheus. It takes him, I think, well over a year in this, so some of those shorter labors that we talked about before, we're seeing him having to do like his whole 12 years of service through this. And basically when he gets it back, Eurystheus turns right back around and has the next labor for him. Remember with this, we see Hercules doing things sort of the smart way. We still see some hints of his anger, like shooting up at the sun. And remember also just little things that we talked about, how cattle are money and little things like that. Hopefully you guys found this video useful. Please let me know what you thought of it or if you had any difficulties playing it. and we'll do the next labor probably in a couple of days. Take care.